Franz Kafka. The Trial. Have you ever felt frustrated dealing with complicated bureaucracy? Or felt lost in an illogical system trying to accomplish some basic task? Imagine facing those irritating feelings, but exponentially worse, in a legal battle for your life. That nightmarish predicament is captured in this blink to The Trial, a classic novel by Franz Kafka. Its message remains fascinating and deeply relevant to modern life thanks to its foreboding depiction of the struggle of the individual against the absurd, overbearing cruelty of faceless systems and organizations. You'll find yourself asking profound questions about personal freedom and dignity as you walk in the incarcerated Joseph K's shoes. It will leave you appreciating your freedom, longing for it, or wondering how fragile it can be. Joseph K's arrest and cross-examination. One morning, Joseph K awakens to quite an unpleasant surprise. He's placed under arrest, incredibly within the very walls of his own rented bedroom. This peculiar incident is carried out by two unknown men who enter his room, give no explanation as to why he's being detained, and then, rather rudely, help themselves to the breakfast that K's landlady, Mrs. Grubach, regularly serves him at 8 a.m. every day. After permitting K to dress himself properly, the mysterious policemen escort him to the bank where he works as a senior chief clerk. But they then, much to K's humiliation, insist on assigning 3 junior bank employees to intently monitor his activities throughout the workday. Seeking clarity following the morning's events, K returns to speak with Mrs. Grubach, his landlady, about any further insights she might be able to provide. Having overheard snippets of private conversations between the authorities, she views the situation as quite complex, yet likely not extremely dire or worthy of overwhelming concern. K also feels obliged to personally apologize to Miss Burstner, the young lady occupying the room adjacent to his own, for the intrusive breach of privacy she endured during the unexpected arrest process within their shared apartment. The policeman had used her room to interrogate K in her absence. She appears more curious and enthralled by the thrilling drama, though, than truly bothered or offended. Their friendly conversation gradually increases in warmth and intimacy, until K is overcome with affection for Miss Burstner, kissing her passionately without invitation or reciprocation, until finally departing the premises in a most bewildering manner. He's surprised at his actions, yet relatively pleased. K is soon informed that regular cross-examination court hearings regarding his puzzling case will be held on Sundays so that he doesn't have to miss work to attend them. Despite not being familiar with the neighborhood where the court is located, K searches and asks around until he finds it. The court is crowded by people crammed together on rows of benches within a neglected space lacking upkeep or organization. A raised panel consisting of ominously seated men is headed by one judge, who condescendingly questions K about his proud career. Laughter breaks out from the crowd when K says he's the chief clerk at his bank. The judge then accuses K of tardiness, charges he adamantly contests, arguing that any delays were caused by the court's failure to appropriately summon or alert him beforehand. K proceeds to give an impassioned complaint against the unjust, nonsensical procedure. Some members of the audience applaud K, but others stare in silence. He then catches the presiding judge attempting to send a hand signal to a member of the gathering using a sneaky hand signal. K continues with his defiant speech, but is suddenly interrupted by the sight of a member of the court sexually harassing a woman in plain view. A few people gather around the pair to watch and cheer, and interrupt K when he attempts to intervene and help the woman. In the commotion, K notices the same badges on the collars of all the court attendees. K concludes that although they pretend to have different views, they all belong to the same organization. K leaves the court feeling certain that no sincere opportunity of defense has been afforded him. He hopes his words influenced some doubters, but realistically he thinks the process was void of all meaning or integrity from start to finish. Like much of Kafka's work, The Trial is a richly allegorical and metaphorical novel that explores several profound themes, many of which are masked by their open-endedness and ambiguity, allowing for multiple interpretations. Joseph K's absurd arrest in his bedroom by mysterious authorities and his subsequent inscrutable trial epitomize an individual's helplessness against opaque and unjust bureaucracy. The invasion of privacy, public humiliation, and lack of explanation K endures highlight his loss of personal autonomy to irrational systems of control. Though demonstrating principled defiance in his court speech, K remains subject to an absurd legal process more concerned with spectacle than fairness. Ultimately, any hope for sincere defense proves futile. The attendees collude as one body devoid of accountability. Kafka's portrayal remains powerfully resonant given today's expanding bureaucracies and surveillance systems enabled by technology. Vast databases tracked by algorithms increasingly influence people's access to employment, resources, and due process in opaque ways. Citizens around the world can relate to K's bewilderment at facing incomprehensible bureaucratic machinery beyond an individual's control. Without sufficient transparency and oversight, such systems risk serving institutional self-preservation over fair treatment. Kafka warns against the human price of placing unchecked authority over lives in the hands of convoluted administrative networks governed by internal rules rather than ethics. Though defiance retains personal dignity, Kafka hauntingly implies true autonomy requires dismantling unjust structures. The Whipman at the Bank. One evening, while leaving work, K overhears sighs behind a junk room door. He opens the door. Inside, he finds the two policemen from his arrest, Franz and Willem, with a whipman preparing to flog them. They claim they're being punished because K complained about them. K denies doing it intentionally. In his defense, Willem complains about the difficult lives of policemen. Franz says he was misled by Willem and talks about the shame he feels with his bride waiting for him downstairs. K finds the situation bizarre and cruel. He tries, unsuccessfully, to bribe the whipman to release them. The whipman starts flogging a pleading Franz while Willem cowers. Franz's screams echo horribly around the room. K knocks Franz unconscious to silence him, then diverts approaching bank staff to prevent them from seeing the lashing. Alone afterward, K blames himself for being unable to prevent the beating. If junior court staff like the policemen and whipman are so contemptible, K wonders, then high officials must be guilty and deserving of punishment. The incident continues to traumatize K the next day at work. So when he closes, he decides to open the junk room to see what's going on in there. He finds the same scene, with the whipman holding his cane and the policeman screaming. He immediately locks the door and orders the bank's cleaners to clear the room, but realizes it's too late in the evening for them to start cleaning that day. Feeling guilty, K finds a brief moment of comfort sitting with the cleaners. He then gets up and goes home, with his mind still reeling from the shocking events inside the junk room. The scene featuring the whipman at the bank is one of the most enigmatic and symbolically rich sections. The meanings behind it can be interpreted in various ways, and they're often seen as reflecting some of the broader themes, such as abuse of power and bureaucratic oppression. The bizarre and disturbing nature of the scene contributes to the overall surreal and nightmarish atmosphere. Kafka often employs such surreal elements to convey the protagonist's disorientation and the absurdity of the world he inhabits. The scene may also symbolize the internalized sense of guilt and fear of punishment that K experiences. Despite his efforts to understand and confront the charges against him, K is constantly haunted by a sense of wrongdoing and the anticipation of retribution. The defendant tries to find help. Joseph K's Uncle Carl, worrying that his nephew is going to bring disgrace on the family, takes him to meet Dr. Huld, his lawyer friend. Uncle Carl tells K that Huld has the experience and connections to help his weird legal situation. The pair shows up at Huld's place late one night to seek the lawyer's counsel. Huld has been sick for a while and is recovering in bed. He's nursed by a woman called Lenny. Huld says he's heard about K's case through his connections, but K is skeptical about the lawyer's ability because most of his clients seem to be poor. Huld promises to help, but warns it'll be a tough task. Uncle Carl becomes impatient with Lenny hovering about the room and asks her to leave so that they can continue their conversation in private. Lenny does as she's told, but K has the feeling she's eavesdropping on them. The visitors now realize that Huld has another guest in the room, who only comes into view when Huld starts debating K's case with this stranger. The guest is a former court director, a detail Huld provides as evidence of his own legal connections. Kay feels lost as the lawyer and his friend contemplate legal matters. Kay hears a noise inside the house and goes to check it out, but Lenny pulls him into a side office and jumps onto his lap. She claims she used the noise to draw Kay out and promises to help him with his case. Kay only needs to be less combative and confess his guilt. Kay is stunned by the demand, but finds himself increasingly drawn in by her physical affection. She wants to know if Kay has a lover and seems jealous when Kay shows her a picture of Elsa, a girl he's seeing. They hear noises from the hall, signaling that Kay has to go. Lenny slips him a key to return any time. Outside, his uncle is waiting, angry that Kay vanished with Lenny and messed up his defense. Kay becomes distracted from work as his case grows intense even without making any visible progress. His colleagues and boss start noticing lapses, and his clients have to wait longer to see him. A rival colleague starts to take advantage of the situation, courting Kay's clients as Kay descends into a spiral of court appointments, missed hearing dates, dubious lawyers, and unsolicited help. One such offer comes from his client, a manufacturer. The man introduces Kay to Titorelli, a court painter with legal connections. Titorelli explains to Kay how the court system works. For Kay to have some semblance of a normal life, he has to choose between 3 possible trial outcomes: a rare full acquittal, a temporary acquittal that could randomly reinstate charges, or a deferment to stall his case. Titorelli promises to leverage his connections with judges to get Kay a temporary acquittal or a deferment. Titorelli has access as the official painter of portraits for court officials, a position he had inherited from his father. The painter explains that Kay's apparent innocence won't convince the court to drop the charges. Titorelli says he'll write a document proclaiming Kay's innocence and personally vouch for it to certain judges. Some might even want to meet Kay in person. While he's not exactly certain about the outcome, Titorelli argues that getting judges' signatures on his document will give Kay's case momentum. Kay can't understand Titorelli's optimism. A temporary acquittal or deferment isn't the verdict he wants. The threat of sudden rearrest would still dangle over his head either way. He also doesn't like the stress of an indefinite court struggle. As Kay prepares to leave, Titorelli advises Kay to walk across his bed and exit through the back door to avoid some troublesome kids who've been interrupting their conversation. Kay realizes Titorelli's art studio is actually part of a huge network of court offices filling the entire attic. Then Titorelli asks Kay if he'll buy one of his landscape paintings. Kay agrees, not wanting to sound ungrateful after the help he's just received. Sensing an opportunity, Titorelli offers another, and then a third painting, and says he has more of the same. Feeling exasperated, Kay asks Titorelli to package all the landscape paintings. Titorelli promises to find a porter to deliver them. Joseph Kay experiences escalating isolation and exploitation as he desperately seeks aid for his inexplicable legal plight from those supposedly positioned to help. Though his uncle introduces him to the well-connected lawyer Huld, this relationship proves hollow. Huld debates Kay's case with a friend rather than counseling him directly. The lawyer's assistant Lenny manipulatively offers Kay intimacy in exchange for a confession, further muddying the ethics of the process. Even the court painter Titorelli, promising to leverage judicial connections, pushes indefinite deferments and temporary acquittals over the verdict Kay seeks. Realizing the attic studio sits amidst a vast court bureaucracy, Kay feels engulfed by parasitic systems thriving on his case rather than resolving it. Titorelli, for example, takes advantage of Kay's situation to sell his art. As Kay declines professionally and personally, his dependency feeds self-interested players thriving on this opaque, irrational legal machinery. Kafka's portrait of exploited helplessness reverberates today when power differentials between individuals and institutions often prevent transparency and accountability. Without agency, the alienated individual struggles for autonomy and meaning against cumbersome systems rigged against clarity or closure. Like Kay, people can become consumed by processes designed to perpetuate themselves rather than serve. Kay dismisses his lawyer and faces his destiny. Kay decides to sack his lawyer. Huld hasn't found any solutions despite his experience and connections. Kay goes to the lawyer's house to tell him in person. There, Kay finds Lenny with a man called Block, and although he instantly feels jealous, starts bonding with him when he finds out the man is also going through a trial. Block has secretly found other lawyers to help him and is only here to mine information from Hold. Lenny tries to stop Kay from dismissing Hold, but Kay is adamant. He forces his way into the lawyer's bedroom and locks the door. He tells Hold he's withdrawing legal representation. Hold implores Kay to reconsider given their friendship and the work he's already done. Kay says the case has barely moved. Kay finds the lawyer's insistence humiliating and insists his decision is final. Hold says Kay doesn't understand just how much privilege he's enjoying. A demonstration would show Kay just how lucky he is. Hold asks Kay to unlock the bedroom door. When Lenny walks in, Hold orders her to summon Block. Block enters the room, terrified. Block even kneels to kiss Hold's hand repeatedly when the lawyer scolds him for not working hard enough on his case. Lenny strokes Hold's hair, pleading with the old lawyer to show Block mercy. Kay watches the spectacle with disgust. Block denies having any lawyer other than Hold. Kay knows the truth but can't betray Block's confidence. Hold seems to relent and rewards Block's debasement with some information. The judge spoke poorly of Block's case, Hold says. After the meeting with the lawyer, Kay encounters a priest at a cathedral. The priest talks to Kay in riddles that offer no clarity. The priest is also a member of the court. On Kay's final day, two men arrive at his apartment and walk him to a quarry. Kay feels resigned to his fate. They stab Kay in the heart and twist the knife, but Kay's mind is focused on the shameful nature of his death. He's dying like a dog. The shame of his death will outlive him. As Joseph Kay's surreal case languishes despite seeking aid from the well-connected Hold, his frustration gives way to resignation, epitomized by the priest's mystifying riddles offering no actual counsel. Witnessing the lawyer shamelessly manipulating the desperate Block, who debases himself begging for crumbs of information, Kay concludes the court system runs on exploitation masked as aid. With his life increasingly consumed by hollow bureaucracy, Kay ultimately surrenders to the absurdity of dying without clarity or meaning, stabbed to death in an anonymous quarry. Individuals facing opaque institutions, corporate, governmental, or judicial, often conclude self-preservation requires compliance over defiance. Like Block, people resign themselves to humiliation and diminished dignity to wring slight advantage from convoluted processes rigged against transparency. Without agency or accountability, the individual risks surrendering their personal identity to navigate uncaring machinery. As bureaucracy eclipses individuality and integrity fades into complicity, Kafka implies the deeper death of the soul. Though avoidance delays the inevitable, meaningful dissent requires reforming collective injustice, not just securing personal exits. Yet Kay's resignation is a reminder that clear injustice often evades clear correction. In this link to The Trial by Franz Kafka, you've learned that the tragic fate and life of Joseph K. are, in many ways, examples of any person living under oppression. The Trial is a complex work that defies simple interpretation, and its themes and metaphors continue to resonate and provoke thought. Kafka's ability to encapsulate the anxieties and uncertainties of the modern human experience makes The Trial a timeless and influential piece of literature.